All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's Tech Tuesday. We're going to be talking about LastPass today, and we have Brian Tschinkel, who is our Chief Information Security Officer, online today, and he's going to be giving you a great overview about what LastPass is, how you can get it, and the best ways to use it. So thank you, Brian, for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here. Thanks everybody for joining. I hope this is an informative session. Please feel free to ask questions along the way and I will do my best to answer them. So we offer LastPass as a service here, and I'm going to be talking about what it can offer you, what it's used for, and why it's important. So let's jump right into it. First things first, have you used a password that looks like this? And worse yet, have you used the same password for multiple websites that you have access to? This is a list of the most commonly used passwords here at Weill Cornell and New York Presbyterian Hospital. And we found this out through some reconnaissance, which I'll talk about a little bit later. These passwords are weak, they're insecure, they are highly common and used by multiple people. And worse yet, we fear as security professionals that if you are using your password for your work account, that you might also be using it for personal consumer services, social media, banking, things of that nature. So we looked at an analysis done by the Cyber News Investigation, and they analyzed over 15 billion passwords. And what they found through looking at these passwords that have been released through data breaches over the years is that less than 15% of those passwords were actually unique to individuals. And what does that mean? That means that of the common passwords, of all the passwords that have been released through data breaches, so many of them are repeat passwords by individuals. So it's very likely that somebody else on this call is using the same password as you, or there's somebody else that you know that may also share the same password. And the study goes into some details about what is in a password. And there were some interesting tidbits that they actually were able to infer how old somebody might be based on the password that they have used. We find all too often that people are using passwords that include significant dates or things about them, pet names, the anniversary year that they were married, the year that they were born, birth year of a child, names of children, favorite months, things of significance. And so there actually were, if you read the study in more detail, there were periods of time where password security changed over the decades, and there started to be a transition into how people were creating these passwords. So passwords are not supposed to be things that are easily guessable. And when these attributes appear, it's often easy for an attacker to scour the internet and social media platforms to try and figure out what you might be using. There are a couple of cool infographics here, which perhaps are interesting statistics, but they might also be things that are a little scary. They have looked at the most common name that is being used in a password. Apparently it's Eva and Alex from the 15 billion that they analyzed. Some other ones are also appearing in this list, as you can see. If you prefer to use seasons, months, days of the year, it seems that summer is the top priority or most commonly found. Friday is the day of the week that people tend to choose, and May is the favorite month. And so keep in mind, what are these numbers showing? In the 15 billion passwords, the word summer appeared in over 1 million of them. Oftentimes we find that when these types of attributes are being used, if they're not specifically correlated to something of significance, they might be correlated to when you were forced to last change your password. And then perhaps somewhat scary is that the percentage of passwords that were cracked were generally 6 to 8 characters long. Much of them were not longer than even 10 characters. Computer systems are so sophisticated nowadays that 8 characters is no longer strong enough. We did a similar analysis here at Weill Cornell last fall, and our security engineers on our team actually made a controlled environment and an attempt to actually crack our passwords, user passwords here at Weill Cornell. This was done in terms of trying to identify how secure our population might be. And when you think about it, a password controls access to so many sensitive systems that you might have access to. If you have access to Epic or WBG or WRG, and somebody gains that credential, they can impersonate you, they can gain access to some of our most sensitive data. What we found after looking at almost 25,000 accounts on our network is that with a computer that was 7 years old and only running for 24 hours, we were able to crack 41% of our users' passwords. The chart at the bottom shows a similar trend to what was shown on the previous slide. Of the passwords we were able to crack first, they generally were between 6 to 10 or 11 characters in length. And what we found, right, we tried to emulate the mind of a hacker. We tried to figure out what passwords are typically following in terms of a pattern. What we know, and there are psychological analyses and studies that actually try to understand the human element here, is that when you have a complex password policy like we have today, where you need to have at least 8 characters and you're being forced to include uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, and even symbols, that people generally follow the same patterns. So if you look at this chart, which has here 8 positions in the length of your password, we have found that most people will typically make the very first character a capital letter. And when you do that, and if we assume that as a bad actor who's trying to crack your password, we only have 26 characters that we need to attempt to guess, because there's only 26 uppercase letters. If you then follow through with the analysis, most people will fill the middle characters with lowercase letters, again, only 26 in each position. And then towards the end, they realize, oops, I need to include a number and a symbol. So generally speaking, the second to last position in the minimum character set, in this case, position 7, people tend to put their number, of which there are only 10 possible cases, and they usually add a symbol. And while there are more symbols to choose from, the most common one we see added is an exclamation point. So I would venture to guess that many people here, I at one point was also a victim of this, of creating passwords that tend to follow this sort of syntax. Why is this bad? Well, computers are able to crack an 8-character password that is actually completely random and constructed properly in as little as 30 hours. And that's a modern day computer. So it doesn't take a long time to get to the crux of the issue here. Passwords need to be longer. If a truly random password was created and every single character set was available, you would have up to 95 different characters to choose for each place. There's 26 uppercase, 26 lowercase, 10 numbers, and a whole series of symbols. But when people tend to follow the same pattern, it makes it much easier for people to guess. So the question then becomes, how do we make passwords better or stronger? There are a few key takeaways, something that we are transitioning to, and something that you can practice in your own personal life with how you create passwords. The difference here is that we need to get away from the concept of a password and move to a passphrase. A passphrase is something like a series of words, real words that are easy to read, but they are unrelated to each other, and they create something that is ultimately longer. If you look at some of these examples on the bottom, you can see here that these are passphrases. They're easy to remember. They are real words that are found in a dictionary, but because they are pieced together into one long string, it would be nearly impossible for a system or a hacker to crack this in any of our lifetimes. You wouldn't typically associate attack, cousin, why, and important as an associated phrase. So this is not something that's easily discernible from a password repository or database. If you still prefer to create longer, complex passwords, you can follow the typical randomness pattern here that includes letters, numbers, symbols, or something like this. The key here is that they need to be very long. So longer is better in this particular case. But the same principles still apply. So even if we transition to longer passphrases, we need to avoid things that do appear in password lookup tables. Common lyrics, famous quotes, titles of songs, those things will eventually become commonplace, that they are not as secure, even if they are longer. People will add them to that list of passphrases that they immediately try to guess. To make the process easier, right, it's important to create unique passwords for every single website. If you use Google and you use Chase and you use services at Weill Cornell, those are 3 separate sites which should have 3 separate passwords. The question then becomes, how do we track and remember all of this information? We use something called a password manager. And so we'll talk about that as the point of this discussion, and that's where we offer LastPass. The other thing to remember is that when we do security, we try to do it in layers. So you might hear things like a defense in depth strategy. If one control fails, hopefully there's 2 or 3 others to back it up. So one of the services we offer here at Weill Cornell is Duo, which is used to get into many of our services, especially if you're off campus. And that is our 2-factor authentication system. So Duo is used as a fail-safe. If your password happens to be compromised, not at any fault of your own, but maybe it appears on a website because a company had a data breach, if you have 2-factor authentication available, that should prevent an attacker from getting in. And the way 2-factor authentication works, which I'm sure you're all familiar with from the way we use it here, when you log into a system and enter your password, you might also have to enter a code that gets sent to you via text message, or you have to press the push notification on your phone to allow you to get in. We also made some changes recently in how people reset their passwords. So the other way to improve passwords is the identity verification process. And we used to require that individuals provided a security question and answer database for their identity. The problem with security questions is that the information that's asked is almost always publicly discernible from the internet. There's so much information now that is out there that somebody could easily figure out the name of my first pet, or where I went to high school, or my mother's maiden name, just by starting to do simple Google searches. If I have a public Facebook profile, there might all of that information might be readily available for people to guess and start attempting. So we made a change on our password reset page that now asks you to verify your personal email address. So there's a little call out here to log into our web directory, and we can show this later, to add an email address to your account that is used in the event you forget your password. No longer do you need to use security questions. They're not the gold standard anymore. So what is a password manager, and in particular, what is LastPass? So LastPass is a commercial product that we have a contract with, and we share this contract with Cornell University at Ithaca and our campus in Qatar. And it essentially works like a vault or a safe. And so if you think about, maybe think about a bank and where they would have the safe deposit boxes and the main vault and the combination to get in. Every single safe deposit box could be a website. And that website has a series of information associated with it. You have a username, you have the website name, you have the password associated with it, and maybe there's other relevant information about how to log into that site. The vault that you go to unlock is just one password that then lets you get into everything else. And so with LastPass, the idea here is to create a super strong password or passphrase. And once you unlock that vault, then you have access to everything else inside. And you can use the password manager to then generate unique passwords for everything else. But the beauty is you don't have to remember or know what they are. Okay, so LastPass offers a few key features. One is that it has the ability to generate passwords on your behalf. You can also use the apps that LastPass offers. You see this little icon here in the web browser that actually allows you to autofill the passwords into your websites to log in. Here's an example of how it works. If you happen to log into Google and you have an account there, and maybe you have multiple accounts with Google, you can click the icon that appears in the field, and you will see the accounts that you have previously added. Now, LastPass supports more than one account for a service. So if you have 2 Gmail accounts, or you have one for someone else in your family, you can select the one that you wish to pre-fill, it will automatically populate the username. And then on the next screen or wherever the password box shows, it will populate the password into the screen. Now, this is limited to web-based applications if you're using this on your computer. So unfortunately, this does not work with things like Epic yet, or if you try to log into your computer, at the log on screen. But if you have a phone and you're using the LastPass app, you can use it to log into websites or mobile apps.
Hey, Brian, we got a couple of questions if you don't mind pausing for just a quick second.
Sure.
From Robert, we got, how is it possible to enter billions of login attempts to crack a password? Doesn't the system protest after just a few failed attempts?
That's a great question. And most systems, especially good ones, should prevent what we call brute force attacking. What happens in this particular case, and actually what we did to simulate the attack, was that we actually obtained an offline copy of the password database. So when systems and companies get compromised, the attackers usually find a way in through a weakness in another system, and they manage to get their way all the way to the most critical system in the enterprise, the one that happens to hold the passwords for every single user. If they're able to extract a copy of that password database, they can take that file offline and then they can go to town, and just time is the only thing on their side. So we're running against them in that case. So when that happens, it's an offline password attack, and there is no other system that is then preventing you from trying to your heart's content.
There's one from Patricia. How is this different from storing your password in Chrome currently? When you log in and click yes to save your password, for example.
It's actually a very similar feature. So Chrome, Apple Keychain, Firefox, some of the web browsers offer this sort of capability. It functions very much the same, but the features are generally different. So the web browser ones do not always support the ability to generate new passwords, and they may or may not sync to multiple devices or apps. Some of them do, so there's certainly nothing wrong with using something like Chrome. But the feature set that's available in a commercial product may be more appealing to you based on what your use cases are.
A question from Dina. Is this going to be presented to at a Chiefs meeting? Also, what if a physician does not have a personal email and only uses a Weill Cornell email address? This is in response to the directory.
Yes. So happy to give this presentation, Dina, at a Chiefs meeting or something else where it would be beneficial, not a problem. And if a physician does not have a personal email address, this is a rare case that we've come across since making the change. We do need something other than a Weill Cornell email address. So let us work with those individuals one-on-one to figure out a solution for them. We have encountered that a couple of times before, but we take it on a case-by-case basis.
And I'll give you one more before you move on. From Lee, what happens to your LastPass if you leave Cornell?
Okay, so LastPass, what we are doing is actually giving you a service that, where we're essentially covering the cost. So if you leave Cornell, you will keep your LastPass account, but the premium features will go away. And so essentially what happens is LastPass Enterprise gets converted to a LastPass Premium trial. And then you have the option to continue paying for LastPass if you prefer, or you can continue using it for free, and you can evaluate the solution, the features that are available in the free version versus the premium version to determine which one you want to do. Now, if you have access to shared credentials with other people at Cornell, maybe you are, managing multiple systems, and there are certain, accounts that you use to log in, and those are shared among Cornell colleagues. You will lose access to those types of things because those are specific to Cornell systems. But if you have created personal accounts or entries in the LastPass account, you will still retain access to those. Okay, so this is the next screen here where you have the option to input your password or generate a new one. So one of the features of LastPass, and again, this is not unique to LastPass, the competitors will do it, but this is perhaps something that's an advantage over something like the Chrome password store, is that LastPass allows you to generate passwords for new sites. So you've likely seen something like the form that's hidden behind this LastPass screenshot. You're signing up to register for an account on a website for the first time, and you're being asked to choose your password. And you likely go to enter the same password that you've used for other services before. This is a way where the extension that's been added to your web browser can help. So you click this little generate icon, and then you have the opportunity to generate a password that will meet the requirements of that web service. And you can customize the options here to suit your needs. So I personally wouldn't recommend generating only a password that is 12 characters long with uppercase and lowercase, but you do have the option to choose something that is longer and contains more elements of complexity. So you can choose to move this slider. I think it goes up to almost 100 different characters. Most systems probably won't support this. But you also have the opportunity to check on uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols. And then notice this little bar. This actually here is showing you the strength of this particular password. The more bars, the better. When you fill all 5, they would end up being green in color, as opposed to just 1, which would be a very weak password and probably shows as red. I see a question that just came into the chat about how would LastPass handle someone else in your group resetting a shared password. So in this particular case, since everyone has access to that shared password, presuming you're all members of the same group, the password then would be updated for everybody to see. Okay, so notice here the other point on the screenshot, you have the option to fill the password, and when you fill the password, it will also save it to your account and associate it with this website. Okay, so not a reseller for LastPass, but yes, there are other features. So some things that are helpful and perhaps might be of interest. So you can share passwords that you have created with other people. This is more so on the personal side of LastPass, but it is a possibility. So we don't permit sharing passwords within the enterprise account with people outside of the enterprise, but there is a way to support this, so I will show that. You also can measure the strength of all of your passwords. It actually will tell you a percentage score of how secure your passwords are. And many of the common websites that people add support automatic changes that LastPass can actually go and update passwords on your behalf and go into the website, facilitate the change, and then store the updated password in the vault. One other thing that's particularly relevant if you are doing any new account creation or online shopping, you have the ability to automatically fill form fields. So you can store an identity in LastPass that has your name, your address, your city, state, zip, other types of attributes that you're typically asked. And LastPass will detect that those fields exist on a particular website, and it can suggest and fill those form fields for you. You also can use this as a safe place to store credit cards. So if you wish to then pre-fill a credit card on an order form, you can store the credit card in here along with the security code and the expiration date. Okay, so I see a question in here about personal accounts, and I'm going to address that. So perfectly relevant question. So all of this might make you wonder, well, is it really safe and secure to put a password into the system? In general, the answer is yes. And I say that with an asterisk at the end because it's always important to do some due diligence and review about the security of the system. So we chose LastPass here at Weill Cornell because we had performed a security review. And the information that matters is presented here. The passwords are encrypted at rest in LastPass's system, as well as on your devices. And the key is maintained by you. So your master passphrase or password that you are using to unlock your vault is your decryption key. Nobody else should have that information. Don't tell, just like you wouldn't share your Cornell password with somebody else, you wouldn't want to share your LastPass key. If you forget what your master password key is, we have means to restore or reset it through backup options that are set up when you create the account, but we cannot see what your passwords are. LastPass cannot see what your passwords are. These are in a completely encrypted vault that only you would have access to. Okay, so in terms of signing up, and I will talk about the tip here, you can go to the lastpass.weill.cornell.edu website to enroll. We do secure our LastPass accounts with Duo, so you will have to have been enrolled in Duo first. If you have not used Duo yet and you need to check or validate that you're enrolled, I would suggest you go to the duo.weill.cornell.edu page before signing up for LastPass. But the alternate tip. So LastPass has the option to create to link a personal account. And so what this means is that if you absolutely do not want to be tethered to Cornell for your LastPass account and you want to have complete and total control over what's in your account, even if you leave Cornell in the future, LastPass offers the option to take your enterprise account that we issue you at Cornell and link it and associate it with your free personal account. And the benefit of doing that is that your free personal account will actually inherit the enterprise features of syncing across multiple devices, being able to store additional types of data. So you get that without having to pay for it. But if you leave, you have peace of mind knowing that you still have full control with your login and password to a personal account that is completely dissociated from Cornell. So the personal account is where you would share information or credentials with people outside of Cornell. And so if you have an account that's maybe used, I have an account where the dog boarding place where we leave our dog when we go on vacations, and I share that with my wife. And so I will create the account and I share that information with her through her personal LastPass account. And that connection is fine. But by me linking my personal account with my Cornell account, my account gets all the premium features that I would otherwise have to pay for. Okay, I think we've got a couple of other questions that came into the chat. The first one from Marie: I've forgotten my LastPass master password and have been unable to recover the account via the link that was provided. The recovery failed message directs me to try again using a browser with the LastPass extension. What does that mean? So please reach out to us if you haven't already. We're happy to help walk you through some of these steps. The LastPass extension is the little icon that appears in the web browser itself. And in the web browser, this icon here, you download it from the application's app store, and this may have some additional recovery features. But please feel free to reach out so we can guide you through that. Is there an app to download from the App Store to have this on your phone? Yes, it's called LastPass. And if you go into the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, they will be there to download. The LastPass website will also show where those where those apps are available directly. If I was set up with LastPass on Weill Cornell first, can I link my personal information and still get the extra features? Yes. If you have a personal LastPass account and you log into your Cornell account, there is an option in the console down in the lower left that will allow you to click Link Personal Account, and you punch in the information for your personal LastPass account to establish that connection. What if LastPass gets compromised? Banks, government, enterprises have been broken into. Would they get everything? Is this a bigger risk inherently if ever a breach occurs, if we have everything on this per se? So LastPass actually had a breach several years ago. I think it was in 2015. And this was put to the test. Unfortunately, they did have a security breach, and they've spoken about this on their website. The passwords were not compromised. The encryption was proven to be successful in protecting the information, so that information did not leak. And in essence, data was proprietary or sensitive data was not lost because everything was still encrypted. I think what ended up being lost in there were some other customer-related information, but not the passwords themselves. Which signup would you recommend, Weill Cornell or personal link? So I personally had a personal account that I linked to my Cornell account. And I did that just to have, sort of a separation of duties, things that were specific to what I used to log into applications at work. I had put into my Cornell account, things that were completely unrelated. I kept in a personal account, but I was able to leverage the premium benefits. How will this link with Epic? So this unfortunately does not link with Epic today because Epic is not accessed in a web browser. So you can't log into it, by going to epic.com. It loads in a separate screen. Hopefully one day in the future it will. So there is no direct path. Now you can still put your Weill Cornell Seaweed password into LastPass, but it likely will not work to try and populate it and automatically fill it to log into Epic. Can I create a personal account with my personal email and then link to Weill Cornell account with Weill Cornell email? Yes. So when you register for LastPass through Cornell, you will be associating the account with your Cornell email address, and your personal account can be associated with your personal email address. And through the Cornell account, you can link both.
Brian, and just to let everyone know, after the session is done, we actually do have a guide on how to link both accounts. So we'll be sending you that link so that you can take a look at how you can link your accounts, your LastPass accounts together.
Thank you, Vanessa. Okay, can you set up separate views for personal and work-related passwords in LastPass? Yes, so you can create different, yes, to an extent. So the interpretation on what you mean by views, but you can create different folders in here. You can categorize them in such a way where they might be associated to work, or you might have them called personal folders. If you link a personal account to your work account, all of the accounts that are part of your personal account will show as links to personal in your work. So they are very easy to differentiate between what's considered work and personal. Doesn't creating one long complex password that you cannot remember encourage writing it down on a Post-it and then risking exposure? The answer to that is possibly, but the reason why we are moving towards passphrases is to avoid that. So the hope is that these passphrases that appear here as examples are easy to remember words, and you don't have to pick words like this, but the thought is that paste, office, solid, reasonable is something that is legible, easy to understand, easy to remember, and hopefully shouldn't need to be written down in the same way that you would have to deal with X, Y, J, question mark, F, and so on. Must you sign up with LastPass? No, this is a completely free service that Cornell extends as a benefit to its employees, but it is not mandatory that you use it. If you don't create a personal LastPass account initially and link it to a Cornell LastPass account to access the premium features, are you able to do that upon leaving Cornell, or is it too late at that point to inherit the premium features? It would be too late at that point. So once you leave Cornell, the enterprise account is converted to a free trial premium account. So the premium features are here as a benefit contingent upon your employment with the college. Previously, the WCM support website presented us with the opportunity to create an enterprise account, and it described the potential to create a personal account, which would be automatically upgraded to premium. However, working with ITS for a few months, I was unable to upgrade my personal account to premium. Is this still an option? So I think the semantics there are important, right? We can't upgrade the personal account to premium, but by linking it to your Cornell account, it would inherit premium features. But the account by itself, right, if it's not linked to a Cornell account, is still considered a free account. So please feel free to reach out, Daniel, and let's try and walk through it again. And I'll make sure that we try and figure this out and get you to the right place. Also, if I create a password in the enterprise account, will it show up in the personal account and vice versa? So no, the linking actually is one way. So if you create a password in your enterprise account, it only exists in the enterprise account. If you create passwords in the personal account, they will appear in the enterprise account because they are linked. And you can actually create you can log into your enterprise account and you can create passwords that get stored in your personal account if you wish. So you don't have to switch back and forth between the two accounts. But the only difference is that if you log in only to the personal account, you won't see things that are only in the enterprise account. I missed the first 15 minutes of the presentation. Yes, this session is actually being recorded and will be posted online on the ITS website. Will this affect remote users that have the Avaya software and their credit card devices? Liz, can you clarify the question a little bit more? I just want to make sure I'm fully understanding how they might be affected. Will they be able to use this without affecting their accessibility? I think so, but I will need to look into this a little bit more in detail, and perhaps we can connect offline so I make sure I understand the full workflow. Any other questions? If anyone wants to unmute themselves, that's perfectly fine too. Let's see, here's one more. This is my first time using LastPass. I have made an enterprise and linked personal. Can you clarify the best practice of saving passwords to either account? Yes, so my personal recommendation, after you've linked your accounts, use your Cornell account as the primary one you log into for all of your apps, because that account is the one that actually has the features associated with it. By linking it, it allows you to see all of your personal accounts in your Cornell account. So log into your work account and then see your personal ones. And when you create new accounts, actually store them in the personal one. And what you'll see there is your personal account will appear in the folder listing. And then you can actually put underneath that personal account banking, shopping, social media, all of those different types of folders, and organize it in the way that you see fit. But all of this can be done through the work account. So there's no need to switch back and forth, but you get access to all of your personal passwords through the work one with premium benefits. And should you leave Cornell, you can still retain access to that personal account with all of the data.
I don't see any more questions coming in, but oh wait, will personal passwords auto-populate in any way from Chrome?
So the multiple password managers can conflict with each other. So a couple of ways to think about this. If you're trying to, so let's say this, let's say you're using LastPass and Chrome also has passwords stored. Both applications may suggest to populate the field to log in. You may have to make sure you've reconciled which passwords are in which location. The other way I'm interpreting your question is there a way to get passwords that you've already stored in something like Chrome and import them into LastPass? I don't have the answer to that, but I will check on the LastPass website. They do have guides for how to import from other services that you've been using. And if Chrome supports a means of exporting saved accounts into a format, text file of some sort, then you should be able to import them to avoid having to duplicate or retype all of that stuff manually. But the LastPass website would have some information on that, and I can check afterwards. Since you found using capital letters are issues when used first, perhaps can send out recommendations based on what you found in the simulated break password tests and other lessons learned. Yes, so next week, Cornell is going to be changing its password policy because of the information that we found. This is something that will last over the course of the next month or so. And the password policy is going to change to encourage passphrases that are a minimum of 16 characters. And so the tips on the ITS website on our password policy page talk about creating stronger passphrases that are easier to remember and follow this convention here. where we are suggesting things that look like this and less so things that look like this. So all of that information, along with some helpful tips and guides on how to create strong passwords that are easy to remember, are on the ITS website. Do we manually add passwords to the LastPass account, or do they only get added as we sign into their respective web page in the browser? You can do it both ways. So if this is something that to make the transition, I would say you need to spend a couple of hours setting it up for the first time, on a Saturday afternoon, whenever you can dedicate it. And you can go through website by website and add them as you see fit, or you can just start manually creating things. I think it's probably easiest to add passwords as you log into sites, because you might want to change the password at that same time. So if you know that you're already using a password to log into Amazon that is the same to log into Bank of America, you probably want to change those passwords so that they are unique. And maybe they're not strong enough today. Go log into Amazon.com, go to the change password page, generate a new password with LastPass, and it will automatically save it and add it to your vault. Do the same thing on the bank website. That's probably the easiest way to approach it if you feel like you need to kind of start from scratch here and generate passwords as you go. If we create a new password now, will we have to change it again when the new password policy is implemented? Yes. So don't go change your password now. More information to come on Monday. We cannot tell how strong your password is today. The passwords are encrypted, so we don't have means to see information until, of course, we've gone through a brute force cracking exercise, which is not an everyday occurrence. So as part of that, we'll be requiring people to change their passwords after the change has been implemented. So there is no point to go and change it today for that reason. Do we need to create a personal account via LastPass, or can that be done through the enterprise user login? You need to create the personal account on LastPass.com first. That is something that is completely separate from Weill Cornell. So make sure you have that up and running before, or just separate from logging in at LastPass.Weill. Why is a passphrase not vulnerable to a brute force attack? They are vulnerable, but they take much longer than anybody has patience to wait around for. So systems, when you think about it, a password that's only 8 characters, there's only so many combinations or permutations of what's possible. And computers are so powerful nowadays that they can iterate through in just a little bit more than 24 hours, all the possible combinations that are available for 8-character passwords. The systems can attempt to crack a passphrase that is much longer, 16, 20, 30 characters in length, but the amount of time increases exponentially. It literally can take centuries to crack a passphrase that is 24, 26 characters long. Time is the only thing that is that you're up against when you have access to an encrypted password. It is literally just a guessing game at that point. So the important thing about creating passphrases is not to choose things that are common lyrics, quotes, famous phrases, things of that nature, because those are the types of things that people will try first. Remember, trying to get in the mindset of how we create passwords. So using things like "I want to hold your hand" from a Beatles song, or other famous quotes and phrases, are things that are going to be added to the password dictionary that hackers use. But everything else, right, is completely random and will take longer. With the new passphrase requirement, please also assess the system to prevent unnecessary re-entry of passphrase and logins. Thank you for the feedback. We are actively looking at this, realizing that the longer length is something that might be quite annoying or a nuisance. LastPass can store your seaweed password and can fill it for many systems. I understand not all, so we are looking at alternate ways to make that process a little bit easier. Are spaces between words used or allowed? Yes, by all means. I personally think the spaces make it easier to remember. It's nicer visually to look at, so my brain works better to see the words with spaces in there, and systems will accept spaces in passwords, so that is fine. What do I do when LastPass gets hacked? I've known I've seen this in a time or two in the news. Call us. Let's talk about it. We're going to know about it. So if LastPass gets hacked, like it did, several years ago, we reach out to our representatives. As an enterprise customer, we have contacts at the company to get inside information that may or may not be publicly disclosed. We have, perhaps a faster chain of, contact to find out if any of the data has been at risk. Again, the passwords are encrypted at rest. So that has led to assurances for us as security professionals that the service is safe to use. And that was something that was not broken when the hack happened back in 2015. Brian, if you're in a situation where you may need to use a friend's computer and there is LastPass installed there or may not be, how will you be able to get to your passwords? This has happened to me before, and you can log into LastPass from another location. It is a little tedious to do it, but it's not impossible. So if you're on a public computer and you go to lastpass.com on the web, now you will be prompted to use Duo because you're logging in from a foreign location that's not previously known to you. And you may also be prompted to approve the authentication via your Cornell email account. It may recognize that you're trying to log in from a completely foreign place and ask you for permission to do so. This is something that's also available in the LastPass settings that you can customize. When using LastPass, do the PCI industry still require to change passwords every 90 days? Yes, unfortunately they do. So people that process credit cards are not immediately planned to be in scope because the PCI requirement does have a different policy. We are looking at ways to perhaps get around this by justifying the strength of passphrases. And I am willing to bet that in the next release of the PCI data security standard, that they will be catching up with the rest of the industry to support longer passphrases that are easier to remember. The auto login feature is very helpful for all those SAML windows. Yes, absolutely. So if you log into various websites that we host, you will notice the same page, the WCM web login screen, and LastPass can autofill your seaweed password to log into those screens and save you some time.
Well, it looks like we're a little over time. Brian, was there anything else that you wanted to mention before we wrap up Tech Tuesday?
I don't have anything else. These were some great questions. My contact information is right here on the front slide. Please don't hesitate to reach out. For some of you who I said, let's talk offline, please reach out to me so we can answer your questions in more detail. Contact us, the ITS security team or the ITS help desk, and we'll make sure that we get you up and running. And we look forward to supporting you on the service.
Awesome. And we'll be sending out in the recording and some links about how to use LastPass in an email to everybody who's registered today. So if you have more questions after this, feel free to just hit reply on that email and we'll make sure that your question gets answered. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.